Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. As night fell over the quiet town of Willow Creek, the only sounds that pierced the stillness were the crisp rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Nestled between dense forests, the town was known for its picturesque landscapes and close-knit community. But beneath this idyllic exterior lied secrets that would soon capture the attention of the local police. And eventually, the nation. The storm that brought in the chill that evening was more than just a harbinger of winter. It christened a case that would unravel the lives of many. As the clouds thickened and the rain began to pour, the quaint houses along Maple Street were cloaked in a veil of darkness. Light flickered in the Hargrove residence, a modest homelet, until that night had been filled with laughter and light. Mrs. Ruth Hargrove, beloved by her neighbors for her warm smile and glittering cookies, had plans that night. She was hosting her weekly book club, an event cherished by the 6 women who attend. One by one they arrived, baskets of treats in hand, eager to share stories and discuss their latest reads. Ruth had picked a novel that pushed boundaries, reflecting on hidden truths, foreshadowing an uninvited turn of events. But as the clock struck 9, a sudden sharp scream shattered the comfort of polite conversation. It rang out like a siren in the night, a terrified cry that would not soon be forgotten. The 7 women froze, exchanging alarmed glances, instinctively acknowledging that something had gone horribly wrong. They rushed toward the back of the house where the terrified voice had beckoned them. All that was left was confusion, panic, and a single chilling question. What had happened to Ruth Hargrove? A victim. The room was silent, save for the muffled sounds of the rain tapping against the windows. As the women gathered in a tight circle by the kitchen doorway, their faces pale, the warmth of friendship quickly faded, replaced by the ice-cold grip of fear. In the dim light, a figure slumped against the kitchen counter. Ruth Hargrove, once vibrant and full of life, now diminished, her breath shallow and her body trembling. One of the women, Linda, broke away from the group, instinctively moving toward her friend. With shaky hands, she reached out and touched Ruth's shoulder, gently shaking her. Ruth, are you okay? Her voice trembled, revealing her deep-seated panic. Ruth's eyes fluttered open. There was confusion, but also an inexplicable fear lurking behind them. They rapidly assessed the scene, eyes darting to the dropped book, its pages still flapping as if caught in a storm of their own. A panic attack, someone suggested, though the thought felt inadequate against the rising tension. But there was something amiss, a sense that this moment was more than just a case of nerves. Ruth was clutching her chest, her breathing uneven, and suddenly, Linda noticed the red mark along her arm, an angry swell, as if something or someone had grabbed her. Within moments, the cozy kitchen transformed into a stage for chaos. Calls to 911 began to echo in the dim light. Her voice shaking with urgency. All the while, Ruth's frantic gaze flitted around the room. It was clear that fear had etched itself deep within her. "Is there someone else here?" she gasped, eyes wide with horror as the women exchanged anxious glances, the pregnant silence hanging heavy. What shadows had invaded their haven of laughter on that rain-soaked night? They huddled closer. This was supposed to be a night of solace. Now it teetered perilously on the edge of something unexplainable. Crime scene. By the time the sirens wailed in the distance, announcing the arrival of law enforcement, the atmosphere in the Hargrove kitchen had shifted dramatically. The once cozy space was now tinged with dread, the inviting aroma of cookies and coffee replaced by an unmistakable scent of anxiety. Officers poured through the door, eyes scanning the scene with trained precision. Detective Cromwell, a seasoned investigator with over a decade on the force, stepped forward, his expression calm but serious. He knew the importance of maintaining control amidst chaos. The kitchen was alive with the whispers of the women, their hearts racing as they replayed the events leading up to Ruth's sudden distress. "Ladies, I need you to step back," Detective Cromwell instructed gently, his voice reassuring but firm. "Please let the paramedics work," he observed as they reluctantly retreated, their eyes glued to the scene that reeked of far more than just a book club gone awry. The room told its own story. The overturned chair, the flickering lights, and the half-empty teacups all spoke of a fractured evening. His gaze fell upon the kitchen counter, and with it, the book that had slipped from Ruth's fingers. The spine creased, pages ruffled. A picture of a woman holding a knife stared back at him, dramatic imagery that seemed entirely too poignant in contrast to the current situation. Cromwell approached Ruth, now receiving medical attention from the paramedics. They checked her pulse, glancing up and exchanging concerned looks at her pallid complexion. Still, Ruth attempted to speak, each word laced with panic, the quiet urgency hidden beneath her gasps for breath. I saw him," she managed. "He was here." The detective's pulse quickened. A suspect? Was there an intruder? The implications hung like storm clouds above, thick and heavy. Resolute, Cromwell took out his notebook, ready to edge down every detail of this bizarre crime scene. Every nuance might be vital. All around him the women murmured in hushed tones, their faces drawn, struggling with the unsettling realization that within the sanctuary of their friend's home lurked the shadow of an assailant. With storm clouds gathering outside, it seemed the darkness of the night was only just beginning to seep into the hearts of Willow Creek. Determined to unravel the web of fear that had woven through their lives, Cromwell set out to uncover the truth behind Ruth Hargrove's harrowing ordeal. The early investigation. The following morning, the sun peeked through a veil of gray clouds, casting a muted light across Willow Creek. The town, which had thrived on the vibrancy of its tight-knit community, now felt heavy with uncertainty. News of Ruth's unsettling experience had traveled quickly, gossip swirling through the streets like the autumn leaves that danced in the chilly breeze. Detective Cromwell stood in the Hargrove kitchen, the echoes of the previous night still haunting the air. The room was quiet now, save for the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. He glanced at the small group of women, still gathered in the living room, their faces drawn with fatigue and concern. They were all close friends of Ruth, yet how little they really knew of one another when shadows brushed against the edges of their lives. Cromwell began his questioning, maintaining a professional yet understanding tone. The first woman, Linda, the one who had rushed forward to check on Ruth, fidgeted with her hands, nervously recounting the events leading up to the incident. "We were just chatting about the book when she screamed. I never thought." Her voice faltered, and she swallowed hard. the tremor in her words revealing the fear still lodged in her throat. Across the room, another woman, Marianne, interjected. "I saw someone outside before we came in, a man, but I felt nothing of it. Just a shadow. It was raining pretty hard." Her eyes darted towards the window, as if expecting the figure to reappear amidst the downpour, invisible yet ever-present. Cromwell jotted down notes, piecing together a narrative filled with uncertainty and unexpected urgency. He asked for the name of the book, eager for details that might illuminate why this gathering had been marred by violence. It was a story set in a small town, riddled with secrets and irony that did not escape in the light of day. The earlier panic began to morph into a chilling realization. The threat was not just a figment birthed from imagination. It emanated from the shadows flickering on the very edge of Willow Creek. As Cromwell documented their accounts, a sense of foreboding settled into the pit of his stomach. This was no random act. Someone had forged their way into Ruth's sanctuary, leaving behind a puzzle whose pieces were yet to be discovered. With the women's grainy recollections accompanying him, Cromwell resolved to dig deeper, determined to track the many layers of this harrowing story. Something within the web of Ruth's life, woven tightly with friendships and secrets, was about to unravel swiftly, and he was bound to find it. It ends. With every passing day, the investigation into Ruth Hargrove's harrowing experience appeared to spiral deeper into ambiguity. Detective Cromwell reviewed the notes he had taken, scouring them for leads that might illuminate specific paths. Yet, the more he delved into each woman's testimony, the more elusive the truth became. The continuous drizzle outside mirrored his thoughts, weighing down his resolve. He gathered the evidence the forensic team had collected. The fragments of glass from a nearby wind chime shattered by the storm, a few droplets of Ruth's blood on the kitchen counter, and the half-read book, its pages smudged with her fingerprints. There were no signs of forced entry, no footprints to trace, and no witnesses who had spotted the supposed intruder. Instead, he was left with a mirror reflecting only questions. Frustration gnawed at him as he re-interviewed the threat. Each conversation felt like a circuitous route, leading him back to the same uncertainties. Linda admitted, "I thought I heard a creak in the hallway during our meeting, but I dismissed it. We were so caught up in the book," she sighed, guilt washing over her features. Cromwell felt the weight of her sorrowing remorse, understanding that fear could cause anyone to overlook the simplest yet crucial details. Yet even as he urged them to search their memories, the fog of their recollections hung heavily in the air. Marianne's earlier sighting of a shadowy figure seemed to vanish like smoke when pressed further. "It could have been a trick of the light," she murmured, uncertainty underlying her every word. Weeks passed with no solid leads, and the women began to withdraw, gathering in hushed groups, uncertainty blossoming into paranoia. Cromwell could see the invisible walls rising around her, as whispers turned to glances filled with unspoken fears. This tense atmosphere pushed the detective to consider the dynamics at play. Was there internal discord, hidden rivalries, or conflicts among the seemingly harmonious interactions of Ruth's friend? With closure eluding him, he shifted his focus to Ruth's life before the incident: a job, her hobbies, her relationships. Cromwell learned about her volunteer work at the local shelter and her passion for books. But the more he inquired, the more Ruth seemed to inhabit a world devoid of enemies or conflicts. The dead ends multiplied. Frustration settled deeper into the quiet corners of his mind. He could not help but question where the truth lay hidden, muffled beneath layers of well-kept appearances. It became paramount that he navigate the complexity of friendships steeped in secrets. In a small town where everyone thought they knew each other, who could be harboring darkness when the sun would finally break through the cloud? Ruth's story was buried under the weight of companionship, and to unearth it, Cromwell would have to prod and push against the walls that stood quietly but firmly around all of them. A break in the case. Under the muted glow of the police station's fluorescent lights, Detective Cromwell leaned back in his chair, the soft creak of the leather echoing in the empty office. Days of relentless digging had yielded little more than the disquieting knowledge that he was chasing shadows. The walls of the station seemed to close in on him, stifling his resolve. Just as he was about to call it a night, an officer rushed in, his expression a mixture of urgency and excitement. "Detective, we've got something," he panted, glancing over his shoulder as if afraid the information would take flight. Cromwell felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. "What is it?" he asked, setting aside his papers. "It's about the security footage from the gas station down the road," the officer explained, sliding a thumb across his tab. "A patron recognized Ruth from the neighborhood, and he mentioned a man lingering near the entrance around the approximate time of the incident. We've got the footage." The detective's pulse quickened as he followed the officer to the back room. The tiny screen flickered to life, showing grainy black and white images of a dreary day, rain drumming against the pavement. Among the few customers entering and exiting, his eyes narrowed at a figure loitering just out of the primary view of the camera. That figure was obscured, but ultimately distinct. There was a man with dark hair, his features mostly shrouded beneath a baseball cap. He seemed restless, casting glances toward the street, then abruptly turning away, his demeanor suggestive of someone who did not want to be spotted. Cromwell felt a rush of adrenaline course through him. "Zoom in," he urged, his voice tight with anticipation as the officer complied. The image sharpened, revealing the man's rough, unshaven jaw, and a patchy tattoo creeping just above the collar of his jacket, a symbol of something ineffable. But it nestled deep in the detective's mind, familiar yet unattainable. "All right," Cromwell breathed. "Let's see if we can identify him. Run a background check on the patrons at the gas station during that time." He turned to leave, a sense of purpose rekindled within him. As he stepped into the bustling interrogation room, a renewed energy surged through his veins. There was finally a focal point, a tangible layer, yet a shadow of worry flickered in the back of his mind. If this man had been near Ruth, had he meant to confront her? So why? But tones of determination suffused his thoughts as he gathered his team. The pieces were beginning to align, the murky lines of the case starting to sharpen into clarity. The atmosphere felt electric, charged with possibilities. In the heart of Willow Creek, the truth was waiting, eager to break free from the barriers of fear and silence that had held it captive. The suspect. The sun rose with a clearer sky the next morning, the storm clouds of the previous weeks finally parting, both literally and figuratively. Detective Cromwell had spent the night poring over the grainy footage from the gas station, committing the suspect's features to memory. He had also received a partial name from the background, checker Derek Monroe, a transient with a record of minor offenses who had been recently seen wandering through Willow Creek. Cromwell wasted little time. By mid-morning, he found himself at the local shelter where he hoped to trace Derek's movements. The aroma of coffee mingled with warm pastries hung in the air, creating an almost deceptive atmosphere of comfort amid the growing tension of the investigation. He approached the manager, a woman named Sarah, who had known Derek for several weeks. "Derek's been in and out," Sarah explained, her brow furrowing. "He mostly keeps to himself, but he's a good guy at heart. Just had a rough break." She hesitated, her voice taking on a cautious tone. "He claimed he got into some trouble back in the city. No one knows what exactly. A good guy or not." Cromwell knew Derek's proximity to Ruth raised alarms. As they spoke, he sensed a growing concern in manager. She clearly didn't want to believe he was anything but benign. Sarah led him to a small outdoor seating area where Derek often lingered. As they stepped outside, Cromwell felt the atmosphere change. The sun warmed his back, but something cooler hung over the space. There sat Derek, hunched over a small table, an uneaten muffin before him as he absently scrolled through a battered phone. "Derek?" Cromwell called out, approaching him with purpose. The transient looked up, expression shifting from indifference to apprehension almost instantaneously. "Detective," he greeted, barely meeting his eyes. "What can I do for you?" Cromwell wasted no time, showing him the footage on his phone. "I need to know what you were doing the night of Ruth Hargrove's incident." Derek shifted uncomfortably, his fingers tapping nervously against the table. "He got the wrong guy, man. I was just passing through. I didn't do anything." The detective studied him closely. "You were seen near the gas station, and now you're here." The words hung in the air like a weight, pressing against Derek's defenses. "Just darting away," he stammered, eyes darting away. "It was raining. I wasn't looking for trouble." Cromwell pressed further, feeling a knot tighten in his gut. "I need you to be honest. Did you confront Ruth that night?" Derek raised his head, his expression shifting from unease to something darker. "Look, things get misunderstood. I might have seen her, but I didn't do anything." As Cromwell scrutinized him further, a hint of anger surged beneath Derek's defensive exterior, a flicker that reminded him of the unsettling unease shared by Ruth's friend. He pulled back, recognizing that every layer had to be peeled back carefully, every emotion navigated on this fractured path toward the truth. "Let's hope for your sake that's true," Cromwell stated, stepping back and noting the underlying tinge. Derek was hiding something, and whether it was incriminating or merely misinterpreted, the detective knew he had just unearthed a deeper mystery slithering through the heart of Willow Creek. The trial. An air of hushed anticipation gripped the Willow Creek courthouse on the morning of the trial. Families, friends, and townspeople filled the wooden benches, their expressions a mix of anxiety and curiosity. The case of Ruth Hargrove had become a sordid chapter, etched into the town's history, drawing spectators and reporters alike, eager to catch a glimpse of the truth that had so long eluded the community. Detective Cromwell watched as Ruth took the stand, her fragility betraying the strength that lay within her. She was the embodiment of resilience wrapped in vulnerability, nerves threatening to unhinge her as she prepared to recount the events of that fateful evening. The courtroom felt heavy, weighed down by expectation and collective grief. Weighed down by expectation. "Ms. Hargrove," the prosecuting attorney began gently, "can you please describe what happened that night?" Ruth clasped her hands tightly, her knuckles white against the wood, of the witness stand. I was hosting a book club. We were discussing a novel when I felt someone watching me. I thought it was just my imagination. Her voice trembled. But then I heard footsteps, and a shadow appeared. With each word, the courtroom leaned in closer, the tension palpable. Cromwell documented her demeanor of the way she hesitated, the tremor in her voice, and the glances at the defense table, where Derek Monroe sat visibly agitated. Throughout the trial, the complex tapestry of emotions unfolded, weaving together love, fear, betrayal, and the desperate search for truth. Derek's defense attorney worked tirelessly to paint their client in a favorable light, turning to character witnesses who spoke of his struggles and his temporary housing at the local shelter. He didn't harm anyone, one witness insisted, casting shadows on Ruth's claims. Yet Cromwell was acutely aware of the moments he had spent with Ruth and the lingering traces of terror that still colored her recollections. She had been fighting against the currents of misunderstanding. Her fear had been palpable, almost alive. Day by day, the trial progressed, each piece of evidence laid bare. But it became evident that something deeper was at play within the dynamics of friendships and loyalty in Willow Creek. As the prosecution presented their case, Cromwell observed glimmers of doubt forming among the townspeople. They wanted to believe their neighbor, a friend of many who could never harm another. However, hesitation crept through the crowd as they considered Derek's past. On the final day of the trial, the jurors were left to deliberate, the air thick with unspoken dread. Cromwell paced outside the courthouse, weighing every angle in his mind. A storm of anxious thoughts. Had he provided enough evidence? Would justice prevail over sympathy for Derek's situation? Finally, the jury returned. A tense silence descending upon the room as the foreman stood, clearing his throat before delivering their verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Derek Monroe Cromwell, held his breath, the weight of the entire investigation resting heavily on the outcome. Not guilty. Gasps rippled through the courtroom, shock mingling with disbelief. Cromwell felt the ground shift beneath him as townspeople turned to one another, confusion clouding their features. Ruth's face crumbled, tears streaming down her cheeks, as the reality of her harrowing experience settled like ash over the remnants of her memory. As spectators filed out, whispers echoed in the hall, doubts intertwining with bitter truths. Cromwell understood that while the trial had reached its conclusion, the real battle lay ahead. Willow Creek would require healing, and the ghosts of uncertainty and fear would linger long. After the gavel came down. In the weeks that followed, Ruth began the arduous journey toward reclaiming her life. Fortified by the love of her friends, yet aware of the unresolved shadows surrounding her experience. And Cromwell, resolute in his intent to uncover the truth, vowed to continue his search that had deeply intertwined with the lives of those in Willow Creek. Forever etched in his mind as a haunting pursuit of light amid the darkness. The aftermath. As the crisp air of early fall settled over Willow Creek, the ripples of the trial continued to unfurl throughout the community. The courthouse, a solemn structure that once embraced the spirit of justice, now stood as a stark reminder of the complexities lurking beneath the surface. Ruth Hargrove, once a beacon of warmth and laughter, now found herself navigating a world steeped in trepidation and uncertainty. Cromwell tried to connect with her in the days following the verdict. He visited Ruth's home where she sat on her porch, a blanket draped over her lap. soft golden light of the afternoon sun wrapped around her. Its shadows of doubt clung tightly to her. It didn't feel like justice, she admitted quietly, her eyes distant as they traced the outline of the tree swaying gently in the breeze. "I know," Cromwell replied, the weight of his own frustration mingling with hers. "Derek may have walked free, but this isn't over." He felt a surge of determination to not just let his story fade into the background, but to illuminate the truth that had circled above them, like vultures awaiting a moment of vulnerability. Days turned into weeks, but despite the verdict, Ruth's spirit remained indomitable. She chose to rewrite her narrative. Starting anew, with her friends, she began leading a local support group for those who had faced trauma, creating a haven for others to share their stories. In this safe space, they discovered the power of community, a tapestry woven with threads of shared pain and resilience. Meanwhile, Cromwell continued his search for clarity, delving deeper into Derek's past, scouring records and hidden corners of history. His determination grew as he learned of unsettling connections between Derek and other troubled individuals in a neighboring town. There was something that had plucked at the strings of Derek's life, something that strayed far beyond the transient reality. Rumors smoldered within the tight-knit community. Whispers of conflicts and secrets heightened the tension. Friends questioned friends, and the ghosts of suspicion regrouped, blending among the innocent and the guilty alike. Cromwell watched how the relationships in Willow Creek seemed to fray, people distancing themselves, as if the very air had turned electric with distrust. Then, one fateful evening, Cromwell found himself seated at a modest diner, flanked by familiar faces from meetings held weeks prior. It was there he overheard a pair of locals discussing a man seen on the outskirts of town. "I swear, I saw him by Ruth's house last week." "Not Derek, someone else," one man insisted, concern etching lines on his brow. The detective leaned in closer, adrenaline surging as the pieces of the puzzle began shifting once again. This could be the break he was seeking, a thread to tug at, unraveling the gathering storm clouds. He made note of the details, crafting a plan to dig into the lead and reconstruct the night's events layer by layer. Ruth might have faced heartbreak and uncertainty, but something within her was beginning to heal. The narrative didn't end with the verdict. It was cumulative, the aftermath shaping the people of Willow Creek as they learned to navigate a world darker than they had once imagined. And as Cromwell prepared to chase this new lead, he felt hope blooming among the fragile vines of despair, finding solace in the possibility of uncovering the truths hidden in shadows. Truths that could finally grant Ruth and the town desperately needed. The story was far from over. It was merely entering a new and pivotal chapter in their lives. Reflection. As autumn deepened its grip on Willow Creek, the beauty of the season was tinged with an unsettling resonance. Despite the tranquility of the changing leaves, Ruth Hargrove found solace in her newfound purpose, fostering connection among those who had faced their own struggles. She opened up her home, filling it with laughter and stories woven from grief, resilience, and healing. Each gathering became an act of defiance against the shadows that sought to extinguish her spirit. Or Detective Cromwell, nights spent poring over evidence, felt different now. With each new piece of information, he understood that the truth was not merely a destination but a journey, one that often led into the unknown. The uncertainty swirling around a continuing investigation both fueled and challenged him. He had once believed justice to be black and white, but this case revealed the intricate shades of gray that colored human experience, the motivations behind actions, the histories buried deep within reluctant hearts. Together, Ruth and Cromwell forged an unspoken bond, connected by the intertwined fates of their lives. In small moments, a shared smile, a laugh over coffee life began to bloom again amidst the wreckage. It was a testament to resilience how, even in the face of trauma and fear, the human spirit held an undeniable capacity for regeneration.